You're watching PowerNation.
Today on Detroit Muscle, we introduce this engine into its home. We're going to be running some fuel lines and we'll take a trip up to the chrome platers.
Hey y'all, welcome to Detroit Muscle. We've got some eye candy sitting here in our shop. If you'll notice, this is our chassis that we've been working on out of that GTO project. It's got some trick suspension under it, and I can't wait to sit behind the wheel of this old muscle car. We also have our LS power plant that's been kind of kicking around in the shop. We've been toying with, should it go in the GTO or should it go into that Nova? Well, from where you're sitting today, I bet you can guess which one it's going to be.
Well, if you remember when we got our GTO, it was just a roller surrounded by a box of parts. And to make this a numbers matching car, we'd have to track down that original Pontiac power plant. And my hopes for that aren't very high. I figure why not throw a little bit of late model horsepower into it. All that's left is to get it in there. Well, the engine mounts we'll be using are the Hooker Blackhearts that we got from Holley. They're an 11 gauge stamped clamshell with a polyurethane bushing. And these are the heavy duty kit designed directly to bolt to the LS. Well, we've already installed the frame side mounts. Now that all that's left is to put these onto the motor. So I'm gonna grab a cherry picker and a cradle so I can work on it at eye level. Now there's a lot of different methods you can use when putting a motor into your vehicle, several different types of cradles. You can either do the old school fashion with a chain and 2 bolts, or you can do something like this. Now this allows you to adjust front and back angle as you're putting the motor in, which is really helpful if the body is already on the chassis. Which you can see we have a bare chassis, and plus our accessories are already on here and they're nice and painted. So we want to use the one with these straps to keep from scarring up our new valve covers. Before I install the motor mounts, I'm going to apply a little bit of blue thread locker to the hardware. You don't want to be going down the road and these back out on you. Don't mistake this stuff for chapstick. We're ready to lower the motor down into the chassis and we're pretty well lined up, but we'll make a few small adjustments as needed as we work our way down. All right, let's see how close we can get. Shift back just a hair. Catching on something. Get that out of there. That way. Perfect. Well, we're ready to install the transmission cross member, and we're going to reuse the factory one that we had powder coated with the chassis. I just need to check fitment and see how well it's going to work with our new transmission. Well, with the transmission cross member in here, I can see that I have a couple of options. If I want to reuse the factory mounting holes in the chassis, I'm going to have to trim out the cross member because it contacts the transmission. But if I slide it back a little bit, I can use one hole on each side and I'll just have to drill some new ones. With our transmission bushing in, we can take a couple of measurements to make sure it's centered in the car, as well as we can check the incline of the motor. So we want it to sit about 3 degrees. 4 1/4. 23 3/4. We need to go to the driver's side 1/4 inch. if we can. It's where it needs to live, right there. Go ahead and tighten these down, hold it side to side. With our transmission centered in the car, now we want to check the angle of our driveline. We want it to be somewhere from 3 to 3.5 degrees. We're sitting about 3.3, so that's right in the money spot. Well, I'm glad this LS and 5-speed finally found a home, and no better place than in this GTO. I'm going to get my mess picked up, and then we'll be on to the next step.
If you're looking to replace the fuel lines on your ride, we've got some tips and tricks for you coming up next. Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. As you can tell, Peyton's made some pretty good progress getting our engine and transmission bolted into those frame rails, and it sure is starting to make some good progress. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is tackle the fuel system. I need to run some lines from the front to the back, and whenever you're doing something like this, well, you know there are a couple of options, but it all depends on kind of where you're at and what you're trying to accomplish. One common product that you'll see people use, and that is your standard old rubber fuel line. But not all hose is created the same. If you're going to use some of this, you have to make sure it's for fuel and it's not just vacuum line. Because if you run fuel through vapor, well, next thing you know, the stuff is all soft and spongy and it's swelling up like it's about to have pups, and that's just a problem or accident waiting to happen. Another issue with rubber fuel hose is as soon as you put fuel through it, well, the deterioration process has actually started to begin. This stuff doesn't have the lifespan of some of the other options. Now, also you got guys who like to use this because it's so easy. So with it being soft, it's kind of prone to being nicked and cut and damaged, so it's not nearly as durable as the steel stuff. So if you're going to use this, try to use it only in a temporary situation or in small, short doses. A step up from that stuff is the braided flexible hose. Now this stuff looks really nice, and I know you've seen us use it before. And when you have it, it usually requires these fancy aluminum ends. Now one of the drawbacks of this stuff, also with the rubber hose, is that it won't contain the fuel vapors. So if you end up having a hot rod that's sitting in your shop and you can smell gas, it may not be the tank and it may not be the cap. It could be the line that you've plumbed. If you choose to go that route, there's some tools that they suggest for you to use, kind of like this adjustable wrench that we got from Summit Racing, or some of these anodized wrenches. Now what you'll notice with these is they are size specific, and that also can be a little confusing sometimes if you're unfamiliar with them. You can pick up one of these little gauges and that sure does make things go a lot easier. Now if you're wondering what size it is, you just fit it in there, fits perfectly. Another nice thing about these wrenches is they help to save the finish that is here on the side of your fitting. You'll notice sometimes that guys have used like channel locks, vice grips, or something like that that's got teeth on it, and these things will look like they're chewed up. And that's what you don't want to do. So using these few pieces will help make these look really nice. So what we're going to be using is this, some of the metal line that we got from Summit Racing, because it's far more durable and doesn't have nearly the issues that that rubber hose does. However, this does have a couple of drawbacks. It being metal, it's far more complicated or difficult to bend and flex, and usually it requires a few more tools to get the job done correctly. But we're okay with that. Now with this stuff, we're also going to be running it majority of the way here in the middle from our tank to our fuel injector rail, and we'll only end up using some of the rubber stuff, probably about 12 inches or so. But it's time for me to straighten this stuff out, make some bends, mount some lines. We've got our hard lines bent up and mounted to our chassis back behind us, and now it's time for us to connect this steel tube to our braided little flexible line here. Now obviously we're going to need some form of an adapter. Now you've got a couple of different options that you can go with. One is using this little insert with a tube nut, but the way you got to use that is you have to flare your line, and it's required to go at a 37 degree, not 45 like we've showed you in the past. Now the process is exactly the same, it's just a different die with a different angle. Now, there is one thing that is a little bit different from what we showed you before. Using these inserts, you only flare this single flare. This insert works as the second part of it. You want to make sure to use the correct side of your die, of course, 37. If you were to use 45, it won't seal properly. And get my other side of this thing. Flip it around. All right, now let's just move this along. Now all we're going to be using is just the cone side, because again, all we need is a single flare. Now if you look close on this thing, you'll see that it doesn't have the little folded over part. That's what would be the double flare. And then when you slide this thing up, this sleeve helps to support that flare. Now for this thing to attach to this thing, we need an adapter. All it is a number 6 AN union, male on male. And then we can simply attach this one to it. It's that easy. Now there is another way that you can put a fitting on here if you don't have the big fancy flare tool like what we've got here. And what you use with it is referred to as a compression union. Now as you take this fitting apart, there's this little brass part in here, and that is what does all the sealing. Take the little nut, slide it on there, and then your ferrule slides on here, and then with your fitting, you put these together, and then you just simply tighten it up. Now how this thing works, I'll unspin this to show you, is this little ferrule is compressed. It's kind of squeezed between the two fittings, and it causes the big brass thing to bite into the tubing. And this is a one-use only type setup. Now, with these things, you don't ever want to use them for brake lines or anything like that because it's downright dangerous. But for the pressures that we're under here, this fitting would work just fine. Now obviously we can't 100% complete our fuel system today because there's no fuel tank in the back. And to do that, we've got to have that body sitting on top of the chassis. So all that is just going to have to wait to another day. But luckily, we've made some pretty decent progress. Plop down and have a seat. Up next, I'm going to read you a story or something like that. We're well on our way with our resurrection over our Pontiac GTO project. A while back, I ordered several components from OPGI so that whenever we were finally ready, this thing's all black and shiny, we could fall right in to the assembly. Now, one of those components that I ordered was one of these assembly manuals. And the reason for that, well, I'm no expert when it comes to this particular car, and I've built a lot of muscle cars over the years. And whenever I was sanding on that front bumper cover, I realized there was a bunch of holes and stuff. Also, when we picked this car up, it came with a truckload of parts in random boxes. Now, to assemble this car accurately, well, you need some information. This catalog has all of that stuff. It shows you diagrams with brackets and bolts and exactly how the components went together per the factory. That can save you a tremendous amount of time whenever you're trying to figure out what does this part go to, or whenever you're assembling the front end of this car, how to figure it out. Or we got that subject matter that scares people to death, wiring. If you're needing the schematics, it has that, in case you're having to track down a problem that no one likes to deal with. There's just so much information in here, it's actually pretty cool just to thumb through. We've got the spare tire, the jack location, and the orientation that you would assemble it. And let's see what else. You got the front bumper. I actually find it kind of fascinating flipping through going, oh yeah, I'm going to remember that. Oh, I'm going to have to come back here. Now another thing that I noticed in this book, which is pretty cool, we've all heard of that GTO Judge. This thing has the exact dimensions of the graphic package. So if you're in the middle of a restoration with one of those, or you're trying to build a tribute car, these things will give you exactly the information you're looking for. And it may seem a little bit old school, but it's a book, and you don't have to worry about your screen going dark. Well, we're pretty much ready to mount our body, and then we can mount our fuel tank up under the car. Now, here's a little tip for you. I went to the AutoZone Pro website and found this Duralast filter. Now, what it's for is an 82 to 84 Corvette. So that means it is fuel injection capable. It has these little nipples right here that are designed to have a hose to slip onto it. It doesn't have those big metal lines and that kind of thing. You'll have to use a fuel injection clamp, but what's great about it is you just simply put these two together. Then we'll need one of these fittings that has a hose barb on it as well, which is screw onto our other fitting that will be on the line. The next thing you know, you just slide that onto your fuel pump. It's that easy. Our pieces are going from 60s chrome to modern chrome. See how? Coming up next. Mr. Steve, I did not know you had this many options out here, buddy.
Oh, yeah, there's quite a few available finishes here. I understand you dropped off some parts for your GTO today.
Oh yeah. We're wanting to go something a little bit odd, or at least not just your standard, like, silver chrome, if you will.
I know you've been really interested in black finishes.
Yeah,
so,
that's it.
And I know you've been talking black chrome, black chrome, black chrome. Well, you know anything about black pearl?
No, I haven't.
So just a lighter shade of a black chrome, has a little bit more reflective value. They really complement each other real well.
Take a look at this one. Is this the pearl?
So that's the black pearl.
Man, that does look nice.
All these are really durable finishes, chemistry that was all developed here. So good looking stuff there.
Sounds like you guys have it figured out for sure.
Well, you know, you got to keep improving and, you know, it's all about making these projects into, you know, personal treasures.
Well, you mind if we maybe take a stroll, see what you guys got cooking back there?
Yeah, if you want to go out, you can see the process of how we're actually doing the
definitely.
application. I know you're a process guy and you're ready to put on a pair of gloves.
And safety, yeah, safety stuff for sure. I don't want to touch nothing. I don't want to touch nothing.
Yeah, I'll be glad to show you that.
That'd be awesome.
All right. All right, Tommy, what we're gonna watch here is we're gonna watch our trunk panel that is a bright nickel and a brushed finish be activated, and then we're gonna put a titanium top coat on that. Just like chrome, it's a transparent, and it's gonna give us durability where this nickel will never tarnish. That way, the enthusiast can wax it, wash it, rub on it, and they're not gonna have to worry about tarnishing or oxidizing, which has been a problem with nickel plating, brush, and satin finishes for years. What Tim's doing right now, he's brushing off the part to get the fingerprints off of it, where Tommy touched it one too many times. Now he's gonna go into the cleaner tank, and he's gonna activate the part. And this is AC to DC current, so just like a battery charger, it's not gonna shock you, you just don't wanna touch positive to negative. You're basically putting an electroplated clear deposit on the part. In a way, it's kind of a weaker form of chrome. The issue with it, for me, what took so long was trying to figure out how to dissolve titanium into that bath. Now we're looking at gold plating. Again, a translucent finish, part's been activated. This is a brushed nickel part, so when it comes out, it will be a brushed gold part. So that is 24 karat gold deposit, and now Tim's gonna rinse that off, and he's gonna go over there and put the titanium top coat on it the same way he put on our nickel trunk panel. Again, just to give it durability and add to the life. Okay, Tommy, here we have Tim coming around with some shifter balls for mid-year Corvettes. He's entering the black chrome tank. Just like what we saw with gold and titanium and bright chrome, this is a transparent, and it is a deep black transparent deposit. Right now he is ramping up the voltage in order to cover the part. So the reason we have to be very conscious of the amount of time that we put on the parts is that everything here has to fit back together. And you know, there's nothing worse than getting a really great looking part and then it won't fit back together. Bumpers are normally about 90 minutes of nickel and then 90 seconds of chrome. These shifter balls have 30 minutes of nickel and then they just got 30 seconds of black chrome. We're looking at some various finishes here. We got the jet black chrome.
Oh yeah, that's my favorite.
Real beautiful mirror black finish. Got a lot of depth to it. Then you're looking at black pearl, which is just a lighter version of the black chrome. Gives you some contrast. You know, you add satin and brush finishes in there. You know, you can start creating depth with these parts. You can use these kind of deposits and finishes to highlight different areas of your car. Under the hood, exterior, interior stuff. And you know, it's all about personalizing this stuff, man.
Absolutely. Like everybody likes to accessorize, and you know, that sounds like you guys have a lot of options for sure.
Yeah, we sure do. The neat thing about the black pearl, it flip-flops around in the light. So you'll have a little bit different light look in sunlight. And then indirect light, it's going to have a little bit darker look to it. Get out in the sun, it's going to lighten up some.
Mad scientist stuff over here.